let's start your overview, what you plan on achieving this next 5 years. You're elected, and are you a fiscal conservative or are you a progressive under the guise of a liberal spending?
Okay. Once again, I'm going to have some trouble projecting my voice, but I'll do the best I can today. Start off with, I have 3 children, young children. A 6-year-old boy who's in kindergarten at Cumberland Head Elementary School, and twin little girls who are going to start pre-K next year. So I'm very motivated to see the district do well, first and foremost. And so last year, it was partly, as I mentioned before in my introduction, that I had heard about such a great reputation of Cumberland Head. And I think it's still a great elementary school. However, I quickly became aware of the financial problems and their challenges. And 2 years ago, the superintendent had threatened to cut sports. But what really ended up happening with that budget was, some teachers and other employees did lose jobs. Programs were cut. But most concerning to me, I started just being a resident here and new to the district. I started learning about the loss of the fund balance, which in 2010 academic year was at $12 million. And after this next coming budget, it will be down to nothing that we can use. So we've spent that down, and yet we still have these financial challenges. So I was very concerned, and I've been talking to community members and trying to figure out why this happened, how this has happened. So that's how I got involved. A little bit more of my background, I had my son when I first moved here going to Seton because the pre-K program here was cut to half days. We really love Seton. It was, they have a standard of academic excellence there, and we were really happy there. We were considering having all 3 of our children go to that school district. However, my wife and I both went through public school systems in the southern New York State and really had a great experience. I believe going to public school adds some diversity to the student's education, and it was really worthwhile. There's many benefits going to public school, and despite some of the future and current fiscal problems, my wife and I made a tough decision and decided to have all our children go to the public school system here. I've looked at a lot of things. I've gone to a lot of meetings. I've come to some of these meetings. I've come to some board meetings. And yet, I'm still optimistic that we can make changes that will still make positive impacts on the school district. I've seen some financial mismanagement, like I said, with the balance. And, I am fiscally conservative, so I have been asking these questions. I'd also like to point out that I don't have any financial ties to the district. No one in my family or myself received any benefit from the contracts that the school district awards. I've also noticed some divisiveness within the current board, and at times some complacency, and I was inspired to try to get in there and help out and be active and unify. And I think there is some progress this last year, steps in the right direction, but I would like to be a part of that as well. So as I mentioned, I am financially or fiscally conservative. I was well aware of that $20,000 per student figure, where nationwide it's about half that. It's crept up every year in the last number of years, and that does concern me. Ultimately, I'd like to see taxes come down. I think we do have the money in the school district. This has to be spent more wisely. So I'd like to get on the board and serve on committees and subcommittees, and not only find ways to make this school district financially sustainable, but to see it excel. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got some more people coming in. Why don't we get them seated?
There's a chair beside you, John. There's a chair. I got it. stand up? I've been sitting all day anyway.
Come over here.
There's an extra chair actually.
There's one next to Andy. Andy.
There's two here. Yeah, you guys sit down. I've been standing all day. I was sitting all day. He'll get out of it.
We got two over here, guys.
My office. Your chair, that's good.
Okay. Why don't we get started? Thank you for the people that just came in. If you'd like to maybe introduce yourself, if you are been around, or just state their name and who you are. Maybe we can start with this couple over here, this gentleman. Who you are, where do you live?
You know who you
I'm
are.
a hitchhiker, I just stopped in to see.
And we're Barb and Charlie, and most of the people that are here know who we are.
Well, pardon me, I missed that. Charlie?
Barb and Charlie.
Barb and Charlie.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Barb and Charlie.
There you go, Dan.
And these people.
I don't know who Bob and Charlie are.
I don't know either.
Last name.
You will.
Do you have a last name?
I don't know who you are.
We're sending an attendance sheet so we know who's here. Okay, so just sign your name,
Oh,
that'll be good.
Got it. Anybody else? This gentleman here and this young lady?
Diane Porter,
Frank Andy in town.
Thank you.
And then what was it again?
Katie Miller, I live on Cumberland Ave.
And John Walker.
Brent.
Yes.
Cumberland Heads.
Cumberland. Okay. Anybody else? We got them all? Okay.
Rocky Blake.
oh, I know it.
Rocky.
It's been a long time.
I know. How's Casey?
Good.
Okay. What we're doing right now is we're going through the process of having to speak the candidates for the Board of Education, talk about their background, who they are, what they represent, and what they want to do when they're seated on the board for 5 years. We've gone through and listened to Mr. Hagedorn, and we appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to Mr. Admiral, so that he can tell us, how do you pronounce your name?
Actually, it's Marin, but.
Money,
It's Marin, but.
Money.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But it's just easier for people to say.
What do you prefer?
You can say Marin, right? You can say Marin, that works too.
Very good. Mr. Money, proceed please. Tell us who you are.
Okay, all right, so I was telling people earlier, I'm relatively new to the area. I moved to Plattsburgh in 1999. And as my kids got involved, I have 3 children now in the district. And first, my campaign manager, my daughter, I started going to Beacon Town. I wanted to get more involved because I started seeing some of the issues associated with the cost and with the problems that were arising in the school district. So I attended a few board meetings, and one of the big budget sessions, I was asking questions, and I had a little bit of concern because there was some limiting on the questions that could be asked. And I think I got into one of the board members, and someone said from the board told me, well, if you don't like it, why don't you run? And I said, well, I will. And that is where I'm at, I guess. So, no, and yes, I felt that there was a strong disparity in connection on the board. I didn't think that there was enough connectivity, regardless of whether people have the right heart or mind in place with intentions. I think that if a board isn't unified and doesn't work well, then it's difficult to move forward. That's one of the first things. And the second one is the cost, budget. Fortunately, I have a significant amount of background in dealing with making some value out of a small amount of money. I'm an entrepreneur. I started off as an engineer. I grew up through the school public system in Florida, and I went to Ohio State for aeronautical engineering. So I don't feel that there's any reason why someone with a public education can't come out of what I consider, I grew up a low socioeconomic background, to be able to make something out of themselves. Fortunately, also, I had the privilege of getting selected in the Air National Guard as a pilot. So I learned a lot about leadership and the team building through the military. So service has been a big part of my background. And so a lot of these things, and tying into the finances that I was seeing problematic at the school, I figured I might as well give it a shot. I think that it helps to have a board that has at least some people in that have an understanding of budgets and fiscal responsibility. And as an entrepreneur, my job is to take in technologies, people that have an idea, and try to figure out how we can best take money and make something out of this company. That's what I do. And you had a really good point about what is it that we're spending the money on. One of the biggest dangers that I've seen in a lot of organizations is the whole freedom of speech and accountability, transparency. If there's any organization that has a prominent disposition for hiding what they're doing, that's a red flag to me. And so one of the things that I've done, I've been on the board since 2005, and I've been a part of the audit committee, the finance audit committee, and we have a pretty good business manager. One of the things that we've worked on aggressively is trying to create a culture change so that it highlights a lot of the financial aspects. As an example, when we first got there, I would see a lot of POs that came after we got the bill. That was one of my first questions, purchase orders. How does that happen? How does the plan for these things? And I can understand that sometimes something will break on a bus and you have to go get it. And this happens, but it's about fiscal management. And I understand that inherently a lot of government agencies are not as financially driven because they're not business-like, but that can be a problem. And so try to bring some of that mentality into accountability into the system. And now we don't have any purchase orders that come before there are a couple, but those are being managed, but we've gone from a lot to almost nothing, and David can account for that. We've tried to create a budget process that has more numbers further along in time. And like everyone here, I've had been very frustrated with what got presented in front of us. Not just the amount of money, but how the money was presented. If you go to New York State website.gov, that's the place where you'll see how much it costs per student. And if you look at all the tabs for the school, you'll start up until 3 years ago, because the last one they have on there is 10, 11. 3 years ago, we used to be cheaper than every similar district and in the rest of the state. Up until 3 years ago, that started changing. Our costs became more expensive. And just to clarify on that dollar amount, the dollar amount is an average of the regular, the majority students and special ed. Special ed costs significantly more. So we have to understand that average is both, and as we take in more special ed kids, that's going to change. But you're right, the cost on a per district has been going up, and that's been an issue. My focus is on the value. I think it's important to focus on the value instead of just the dollar, because you can have a decent dollar. Let's say we get a big business that moves into the district, and we're flush with money, and nobody cares because there's tons of money. That doesn't mean that the value of the dollar being spent is good, because that's what's important. At the end of the day, whether you have kids in school, or whether you're retired and you're worried about the kind of neighbor you're going to have, educated neighbor, or your grandkids, it's about how efficient is the money that I'm putting out there being spent, not just the amount. I think that's really, really important. So, am I fiscally conservative? I always have had to be just because of my business, but more importantly, not just the amount of dollars, but how the dollars are being spent, and that's my focus.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Howard.
My name is Kenneth Mauer Sr. I'm 63 years old. I have a lot of life experience. I'm a retired corrections sergeant. I served for 10 years in the military, 6 years in the Navy, 4 years in the Army National Guard. I have 8 children. If you don't think I'm a fiscal conservative, I have 4 kids who graduated from college. I have 1 correction officer, one developmentally delayed child who chose not to go to college but finished high school. I have 2 children who are in school now. I have tuition set aside for them to attend their college so that they won't become a burden on society. I'm not only a fiscal conservative, I'm also a moral conservative. I believe in life, I believe in value, I believe in fair treatment of all individuals. The reason I want to be on the school board mostly is because I think I'm a uniter and not a divider. Not one of these people are going to come on the school board and say, I've got an agenda. The school board is not one person, it's 9 people. I want the whole community to come out and to give me information. Because when I have that information, then I can make a good decision. You can't make a good decision without information. I'd love to meet with the teachers and learn about the teachers. I love being here learning about what the tax situation is in the community. I love meeting United for the kids. Because if I don't have all these people involved, if I don't have the parents involved, how am I going to be a good member of the school board? All I'm going to do is sit on there and be another bump on the log. I don't want to be a bump on the log. I think it was George Washington who was asked to become King of America. His reply, no other king but King Jesus. I'm not coming to the school board to be a king. I'm coming to the school board to serve. And I want to serve everyone. And that's what I'm doing. This is who I am.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Mr. Brockway.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Brockway. I'm 31 years old. I graduated from Beatontown in '99. Actually went to school with Barbara's sons. After I graduated from Beatontown, I went to SUNY Potsdam, graduated in 2004. Then I did an internship with Hillary Clinton in DC as a foreign affairs intern. After that, I came back and worked as a union laborer with Gary's son to put aside money for law school, which I went in 2009, graduated in 2012, and was admitted to the bar in February. I'm also fiscally conservative because I set money aside to start my own law firm, and I opened my own firm a couple months ago in John Clue and Mike Thompson's law firm. So I'm inside their office and getting to be where it's starting to pick up, which is good. I'm also paying taxes on my parents' old house, and I'm in the process of purchasing that as well. So I understand the concerns of the taxpayer group and what everyone's concerns are there. The reason why I wanted to run for school board is that, much like Ken said, I want to be a negotiator. I want to understand everyone's point of view. I've probably had contact with almost every single person in this room. I didn't know Bill before this, but her husband was my brother's teacher in 4th grade. I believe it's 4th grade that he teaches. Middle school. Like I said, I went to school with Barb's kids. Gary, I worked alongside his son as a union laborer. I know Mr. Walker through his funeral services, and like Kathy said, she grew up with my dad, so I've known her pretty much my whole life too. But I think that instead of just looking at the dollars, we have to look at every single group that's involved. It's not, like everyone in this room we're neighbors. So you have to have everyone come together and understand that we're people at the end of the day. And that yes, people have special interests, but we need to come together and discuss things, negotiate, and come to an agreement that's going to benefit everyone equally. We don't want to see the school suffer. No one wants to see Beatontown go bankrupt, which I don't even think is legal under New York State law. But on the other hand, everyone can't have it their own way. We have to come together as a group and really sit down, not pit neighbor against neighbor, and work towards keeping costs down, becoming efficient, pursuing new ideas. I think New York State funding method of schools is broken. I think that it should be centralized to where everyone in the state is paying in, so we're not getting shafted upstate, and New York City is getting more per person than we're getting, or more per student than we're getting. Like I said, I really think that we need to come together and really work on things together and come to an agreement that's going to satisfy everyone rather than each person or each interest pulling their weight and trying to force something through and having a situation where no one's on the same page.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Andy. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and divert the discussion to something which is really important to all the residents out here in Cumberland Head, and that is natural gas. And I bring this up now because we are faced with an issue where the demand out here in Cumberland Head is moderate, and we need more people to be aware of what's going on with NYSEG and the fact that we can have gas available. Natural gas is one-third the price of your oil that you're using to get out. So if you're spending $5,000 a year now for oil heating, you would spend a third of that for natural gas. Of course, once you went through conversions, if you had to convert your existing furnace, et cetera, et cetera. The reason I bring it up now is the fact that what we see as a major consumer out here for Cumberland Head, and I think it would be the green light for the project with New York State Electric and Gas to bring natural gas out here to us residents, is the elementary school, the Cumberland Head Elementary School. They consume quite a bit of fuel. I'm not sure what the exact amount is, but we're hoping, and we met with Mr. Amo, with Eric Anderson, and some of the members of the Operations Committee, pressing on them the issue that we really want natural gas out here in Cumberland Head, and that they can certainly help us in terms of bringing gas to Cumberland Head, the town of Plattsburgh, and the town of Beekmantown. And I'm hoping that when they look at this project, what they will do is phase in as phase 1, the elementary school, and phase 2, the main campus. The main campus is a major investment for NYSEG and a major investment for the school. There's a lot of pipe that has to be laid, et cetera, et cetera. For the elementary school, it's more of a direct line. It shouldn't be that much of an expense to lay the pipe and to get natural gas to the elementary school. That will mean a go or no-go for us, all the residents in Cumberland Head. And if you could think of each one of these residents, I mean 1,200 families roughly on Cumberland Head, if they all heated with natural gas, which they don't, some heat with oil, some or with wood, some heat with propane, et cetera, et cetera. But we could save a tremendous amount of money and have that money in their wallets as discretionary monies. And I brought this up to Mr. Amo. You know, it's to his advantage to expedite this project for the residents, because if they have a few extra bucks in their pocket, they're not going to scream and holler as much, I don't think, when they get their tax bills for the school, because it's always going up. It seems to go up every year, despite everybody's concerns. My point is there would be more discretionary money in the public, in the consumer, out there on Cumberland Head, town of Plattsburgh. I think it would be really a benefit to everybody out here, and it's a cleaner fuel, it burns cleaner, it's more efficient, it runs in the 90s in terms of percentages. So I wanted to emphasize this point to you individuals who are candidates for the Board of Education, because you're going to have some input into that project. And I think it's a critical project for Cumberland Head and the residents out here, especially in these fiscal times where everybody is either getting laid off, cut in salary, increase in their premiums for the health insurances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are not good fiscal times. So if we can find a way to save $100, $1,000, $2,000 a year, please help us. That's all we ask. Why don't we, yes, Mr.
Can I give the group the 800 number that they need to call for NYSEG to
be my guest?
Yeah. If you're interested in natural gas, and that's what I just said. I've been going around my neighborhood. I live off of Brandell, Georgetown, and I've gotten a lot of my neighbors interested. But anyway, NYSEG had a meeting here, and they were talking about if they need numbers, they need residences, and certainly the school is a big player. I've actually offered my help to Eric Anderson to assist in any way that I could and not even being a board member yet. I asked I would make phone calls. I'll crunch some numbers if we need to. But the 800 number is 800-572-1111. And what they're gonna do when you call that number is they're gonna send you out some paperwork. And the NICEAG representative that was here said, it's called a commitment letter, but you're not committed until they start digging in your yard. So if you send that paperwork in, and they're bringing natural gas, and you change your mind, you're more than welcome to until they start laying pipe in your yard. So that's what you can expect from NICEAG. I think it would be a tremendous savings to the school district as well. It's something I would really like to work on.
They've done that conversion in Saranac in
I think it was 96 or 97.
96, 97, and they've been able, the money that they've saved from converting to natural gas, they've been able to buy a whole new gas furnace for the school system this year.
I think this year or last year, they got new boilers.
But it's tremendous savings, tremendous savings.
You're saying the school was able to save enough money to buy what they wanted to buy, is that correct?
That's correct.
But the people weren't.
Well, no, it's not.
If you remember right, when the gas came through, just over here on the 40 road, they ran miles and miles of it. I know, I watched, and I know the guys that were working there.
Okay.
And the propane came down through, and it was working all out nice and everything else, and all of a sudden it went $2, and then it went $3, and then it went $6, and then it went $9. And then it was shut down to 7 or something like that. And I hadn't paid attention to it since, and I guess it's way down now, I guess.
Very much.
$1.29 or $2 or something like that. But that same influx could come in here, where people would be charged X amount of dollars on, and over the next couple of years quicker than they thought.
Well, the gas service is regulated by the Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
So they can't really jump their rates without approvals through the PSC. And I think that the current cost is about a third of oil. I mean, you need a crystal ball to project 10 years out. Right now, the price of natural gas is a lot cheaper. The price of the conversion is minimal. And I think that conversion can pay for itself very quickly, and you'll be able to pocket some of your money you've been spending on oil in the past. I mean, there's so much gas available, natural gas. They're trying to find areas to store it now. There's a big fight in Seneca Lake, central New York, about storing it in a salt mine, and people are protesting that for various reasons. But there's salt mines all over the state of New York that are full of gas.
I'm not denying it has great benefits, but I go back to 1957, 1958, when I'm on Macomb Street, when they came and mandated that no more gas could be used in the village because the people, one, were too old, didn't know what they were doing, two, too many spark situations back in the old houses back in those days. So it's still possible this day, even though they got regulators.
Terry, we have somebody who laid the pipe here, who's an expert in natural gas, sitting at the end of the table there. He can explain it all.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, I do, and I'm not trying to hijack your meeting. I'm really not.
Well, you're not going to be allowed to.
However, I think we've invited these people here to speak and to give us question and answer time.
I understand your point.
And we can take care of Cumberland
I
and business
understand your
after.
point. This is Cumberland had business because I want to make it.
Well, it is, but it's diverting into a whole other conversation.
You
Can we
understand.
just?
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Yes, we won't go into the natural gas real quick. Anytime you bring in another competitive energy, if you choose not to go natural gas, you'll certainly force propane or oil to go down as well in this competition. So that helps. The real trick, like anything like this, the real trick isn't to show them how it benefits us. The real trick is to market for them. That if they read the gas, this is what value is. Because to them, they have to spend a lot of money to pay people to put the lines in. So you really have to come up with the
numbers.
Value to them. What's in it for them? That's the only way to do it. So will it bring more businesses in? Will they make money off of it? In the long term, yes. I think that, and they should be able to look at the real estate laws and look at the square footage and come up with an average of what value it is. But it certainly helps to get people's personal.
Debbie, you got a question?
Yes, I have a question for all of you. We're spending $20,000 per student. The price has been going, the cost has been going up year after year after year, and yet our grades our students are failing. They're not doing well. They're not doing well on standardized tests. They're doing worse than most of other students in the state and in the country. And it just seems that when you throw money at the problem, it's not solving anything. I think we need to be looking at the students and what we can do for them. And I haven't seen the school board address this issue, ever. And I'd like to know what everybody thinks they would like to do to address the students and the problem of their failing grades.
How do you want us to go? Do you want us to alternate, or?
Why don't you start, Andy?
Well, I've discussed with people that are present tonight. I don't think standardized testing is the way to go, but there has to be some metric to gauge how students are performing. But I mean, I've taken God knows how many standardized testing. We had the Stanford achievement test in middle school up until I took the bar exam, and I really don't think that any one person learns the same way. So there needs to be some kind of method that we at the state or the school districts develop that take into account that people learn at different rates, they retain information at different rates, they have different strengths and weaknesses. One standardized test isn't going to be able to gauge their performance. So the state education department or the schools, they should have some input too, because they know their students and what their strengths and weaknesses are. There needs to be some system developed to kind of have different testing methods done and average them together, so you get an aggregate of data that shows how the students are performing in different areas, rather than just having one standardized test and then having one score at the end of the year that's telling you how they're doing. I don't think that's fair to the kids. I don't think it's fair to the teachers. I don't think it's fair to the parents either, because their son or daughter can be labeled as failing or substandard or however you want to name it, when in fact they could excel in a different area that wasn't on the test. So I think that's the answer. Is it going to be an easy answer? No. But there's been no discussion of it, and there's been no alternative brought up to standardized testing, so that's what we have now. But I don't think that that's what we need to stick with, because it's not accurate. So some alternate form needs to be studied and tested.
Well, let me ask you the question, what would that alternative to standardized testing be? I mean, if people are going through an educational process now, it's basically a memorization process. You memorize A, B, C, D, E, and goes into Z, whatever. Then you take a test and it says, well, what's the next letter, kind of a thing. That's just standard root memory, you know. I mean, that's not an indication of education.
Well, I agree with you.
How do we judge success? How do we judge success?
That's the problem. You can't have a test where you're just going to get a number at the end and basically force teachers to teach to the test, which isn't really teaching the kids anything with memorization, in my opinion. If any teacher wants to correct me, that's fine, but that's my personal belief based on my experience and tests that I've taken. So I think that there needs to be, I know this is an evil word, but a study done to show that certain kids learn this way, certain kids in the school learn this way, and kind of maybe you have more standardized testing, but it's not standardized per se. It's teaching someone's ability to memorize, it's teaching someone's ability to process information, their creative thinking. I mean, there needs to be something other than just one test where that's what the whole class is learning and not everyone's repeating it the same way. I don't think there is an easy answer, but one standardized test is not enough.
Mr.
I think it all goes back to the basics of the teachers, the administration. Kids only learn from the environment that they're in. If they're not in an environment where the teachers are teaching, they don't learn. If they're in an environment where there's political conflict, they don't learn there either. We need to get back to the basics of how to teach children. The basics of how to teach children is to present it in a framework where they can understand it. Maybe today we need to go more of a framework of computer learning. We need to introduce more computers into the school to assist the teachers in the workload of these state-mandated testings. This will relieve the time for teachers to be able to focus maybe a little bit more attention on that individual who doesn't learn well on their own. If you've got a class size of 30 children, and I've only got that child for 50 minutes, that leaves me like 1.2 something minutes per child to teach them anything. But if we introduce the technology that we have available to us, then we can not only have the effective teaching to a good teachers, which I think that Beekman Town, basically speaking, has very good teachers. I think Cumberland Head has excellent teachers. My kids went to Cumberland Head, they came out of there with excellent education. But the teachers were constantly involved with the children. They focused on the children. If they had a child in that class that needed more attention, I would receive phone calls home from teachers saying, listen, you know, Eddie needs to maybe have a little more help working on his handwriting, or Eddie needs a little more time to learn interpretation, or Rachel needs to organize her locker a little bit more. These are the kind of involvements that give children the education they need. The state can sit down there in Albany and mandate all they want to. We are the community. Parents themselves need to get involved in their kids' homework. We need to stop saying, or just go hit the computer, or go watch TV, or I've got my own life now, you're going to raise it yourself. That's what's wrong with the education system. And when we talk about $20,000 per child, that isn't being spent all on the education of that child. That's being spent on wants, administrative wants, instead of educational needs. We need to assess the whole process of our school, from the administration, from our top superintendent of school, all the way down to the student, and see where we're failing them. We're failing them because we, as a public, we as parents, are no longer involved in our children's life. We can blame the state, we can blame the school, we can blame the principal, we can blame the superintendent. We brought these children into the world. We are responsible for the education they have. We need to get out there and take control of the situation. And that's what I believe I will do.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Let me start with a little bit. I'm not a teacher. I've never been. I'm not a professional teacher. But I did have a small stint in teaching. And a couple of them. I used to teach swimming kids when I was a lifeguard in high school, and then just after that in Florida. And then I became a lifeguard instructor. It was just part of the whole Boy Scout, Eagle Scout graduation thing. However, when I did graduate from college, I was away from the security clearance because I was working on the B2 program, and I figured instead of sitting around and wasting my money, I did sub in southern Los Angeles as a substitute teacher from K through 12. So I did that for a while, and they asked me to teach a summer school class, so I was brave enough to teach 8th grade algebra in a really tough neighborhood, but I found it very rewarding. Not easy, so I have enough experience to understand some of the problems that are in the educational system, but I'm separated enough that I'm not totally ingrained in it. I did meet my wife there. She was an elementary teacher, those of you who know her. She's not a teacher here. And just as a side, like you pointed out, because I'm not from the area, I don't have any biases. I don't know anybody in the system. I don't know anybody. My business doesn't depend on anything. So I'm totally separated from the whole school system or the community from that point of view. But anyway, so between my limited understanding of teaching, being a parent first and foremost, we have these conversations at home that are pretty heavy. Even as a board member, I still have to measure what I do because at the end of the day, I have to think as a parent what's the best for my kids. And many of you have heard me talk about in the board meetings my dissatisfaction with education as a whole in the United States. Right? We heard me talk about how we're training the rest of the country. I've been to Eastern Europe, I've been to Western Europe, I've been to a lot of places and seen, heck, I come from South America, and I came from a tough environment, and And so there's no reason why you can't tell me that with the amount of money that we have, we can't have better product, to answer your question. But, so what are the issues? A couple of them are, like you pointed out, family. We have a culture that's separated from family, from grandparents, and that's not really the responsibility of teachers. However, we can have an impact. We have seen the reports from the government, from the education department, that the bang for the buck, value to you as a taxpayer, is universal pre-K. Money spent on kids early on saves us money in the long term, 9 to 1. That's the best place to put money in. If you have children that come into school, either pre-K versus pre-K, or we choose who can't go to pre-K because the school doesn't provide it, but they come in later, kindergarten, first grade, they come from a low socioeconomic background, and let's face it, we have low income in our communities, and I can't imagine being a single parent, being responsible for a kid, having the kid come home, having to go to work, dropping their kids off at their grandparents, or something like that. And when those kids come in unprepared or at a lower level than the rest of the kids that are first graders, by the time they get to 6th grade, it's a difficult task. So you ask me for efficiency of cost, best bang for your buck, to change the system is money in the small grades. I have looked personally and done research on some of the impacts. Another big one is the ratio of students to kids. It's obvious. The more kids you have in the class, the harder it is for teachers to do, and especially if they have already come in with problems because they don't have the level of education they should have. The problem with that, of course, is that it costs more money. So we're really, unfortunately, in a fiscal spiral that the less money we have in the next few years, the more kids we have in the class, the less the education becomes, and it's a nightmare. Aggravating that is the testing. That's a problem. Our kids right now, the teachers are stressed because they have to put in all this time into teaching for the test, and they're missing social studies, they're missing some of the sciences that they love. I mean, these are classes that are classes that are developed to teach kids how to learn in different ways, not just reading. I mean,
they're not learning that either.
Right, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I excelled in engineering wasn't because I was book smart. I grew up under a car owned by dad turning the wrench, so I was one of the few engineers in my class that knew what a 3/16 bolt was. So the hands part is important, the science and all that. But the state testing, I think, doesn't work. So a solution to what you're asking. In elementary, there's already the RTI program. And that program, what it does is it measures children's performance throughout the course of the year. So my opinion is that the state testing between K to 8 is unnecessary because middle school and elementary already have markers that they measure the kids at. And if you talk about leadership, leading by example, none of my kids are taking the test. Are not taking the test this year. At risk of the potential impact of the future of my kids, but in doing what I think is right because I don't want them going through the stress. I don't want them taking the test. I don't want them to be measured by those tests. None of my 3 children are taking those tests. So my wife goes this week. We wrote a letter ahead of time to the school board, to the superintendent. This is what we plan to do. We gave them all the information from the website, where to go to look at what the pros and cons are, the legal issues, which there are a lot of in the state. Unfortunately, our district is handling it very well, but by example, I helped out. I gave them ahead of time all the information so they could make a better informed decision and not get scared. So my wife drops the kids off in the morning, they opt out of the test, they refuse. She picks them up right after they come back to the office, we go home and they come back for the rest of the day. The reason why we do it that way is because I also don't want to impact the finance of the school district. If my kids choose not to go, because as a parent I don't want them to take the test, then the school loses their money. And I don't want that to happen in the district either. So that's a mechanism. The other thing that we can do is efficiency on dollars. The culture in the education business has to be changed, and we're starting to do some of that. As you know, the system makes it difficult to get rid of tenured teachers that aren't good. It doesn't mean that all of them are bad. It means that there's some of them are not good, but those can still have an adverse effect to children. So one of the things that I've done personally in the system is while some administrators don't feel that following the protocol is as worthwhile because they themselves may think that, well, why should I press hard against some teachers because I can't do anything about it? You've heard that, right? My approach has been, and I think you can attest it, is that I don't care whether we think that it has an effect or not. If we follow the procedure and we press hard to have accountability and reviews, performance reviews, then you build that into the culture so that at least in their mindset is, well, you can't do anything about it. The mindset is that you're being looked at. So that's how I've affected the system. So yes, I'm concerned about education in our country compared to the rest of the world. I have implemented some solutions that I think are important. Unfortunately, we have to battle the budget, and that's enough.
Okay. Could you just tell me, what's the RTI in which they...
It's the process, it's the process.
Oh my gosh, I just lost it.
Yeah, I know, I just lost it.
Teaching instrument of some sort?
Teaching, yes, it's their...
But it's a process.
It's like academic intervention services,
Well,
but at a lower level.
Well, no, it covers the whole thing. So it's a process. See, it used to be where if the test came back to you and the kids were having problems, you caught it at the tail end of the school year. And by then it's too late. So the new RTI program, what it does is it measures children throughout the course of the year, every few months or every month, so that if they have a problem, you catch it earlier, and then you pull them aside first, whether it's math or ELA, and it doesn't separate it as aggressively. It used to be where you had what was an average kid and then kids with problems. Now you have different levels for English and math, so it's not as myopic, it's not as intrusive.
Capture them early, get them in.
Yeah, it doesn't have the stigma.
Or a brief period.
Not necessarily. No.
Great, okay. Let's move on to Mr. Hacker.
Mrs. Blake's question is a very huge question. I mean, it's multifactorial. It's the root of almost all of our problems, and it can be broken down into many different categories. You know, the question was, we spend a lot of money per student compared to other districts, especially nationwide, but also yet our grades have seemed to dip. So, you know, like I said, there's multiple problems that we can address here. Money per student and our grades. And then we can talk about standardized testing, which is, I think, a whole another thing, although how they're all interconnected. You know, as far as grades are concerned, you know, of course, it's a big concern of mine having young children come up into the school district. And one of my colleagues had mentioned getting parent involvement. That's certainly true. You know, there's multiple levels. I've actually attended my son's kindergarten class. I've been invited to come midday. I work a job where I work variable shifts, so sometimes I have midweek days off. And my wife and I both attended his class, and I've only seen one or two other parents, but I thought it was something really enlightening and interesting that I thought every parent should almost be required, if not, you know, took the initiative themselves. I know it's difficult for most people working normal jobs, but maybe make an exception once a year to visit your child's classroom if they can accommodate you, and my teacher certainly was open to that. And it was really interesting and encouraging. I had a discussion with that teacher as well. You know, it's, of course, everybody's concept of education is different. There's a lot of families who don't value education as well as some others. But getting parent involvement would make a huge difference, and just keep working with them, opening up doors. I remember attending a board meeting. I think Eric Anderson was bringing up the point where his son was asked, who was older, to volunteer to help younger kids read, and it wasn't permitted, or there was some issue about that. And these are the things that need to continue to be worked on, and as a board member, I would certainly do that. You know, open communication with teachers and administrators. You know, I've done a little research, and I've learned that there's been some inefficiencies in scheduling of classes, especially the AIS classes, the students that need special instruction have performed well on certain tests. And that, again, is multifactorial. That's, you know, pointing out an inefficiency perhaps in our system. A teacher teaching a class of 1 or 2 students, you know, in multiple sessions, 8 or 9 sessions, which is true in algebra and some of the sciences, more so in middle schools and high school. But that's another thing that relates to, you know, how we're managing the money that we have, as well as, you know, maybe why our kids aren't succeeding. And certainly, as Mr. Andrews brought up, I read that article as well about the school in Vermont. It's very interesting, and I've heard other people say that, you know, perhaps, you know, there should be a greater effort to pay a visit to that school or inquire. And in that article, it says, you know, there's no magic, you know, there's no silver bullet, they said, to quote them exactly. But it's, you know, there's a process, and there's things that certainly can be learned. And as you mentioned, maybe, you know, evaluating how people learn abroad and in other areas, but certainly start close to home, that would be easiest. And as well as, I worry about teachers' jobs. You know, last year we lost approximately 13 jobs, and other employees lost their jobs, which increases the size of the classroom, the students' classroom. And I can't imagine if it continues to rise. Now this year, Mr. Amell set out a budget with a 4.2% tax increase, which, if approved, doesn't lose any teachers or special programs. However, if it's not approved, or even if it is approved next year, we have $0 in our fund balance. So what are we going to do then? I don't think money's going to fall out of the sky from the state or the federal government. So, you know, we have some real problems that need to be addressed, and it ties, like I said, financially as well as into the grades, you know, what our students are achieving. So, pre-K is another thing. It's a hot topic in my household. Like I said, I have 2 kids that are going to pre-K next year, and I really wish it was a full-day program. In fact, we're fortunate enough to hire a tutor that's already been coming to our house for our little kids to help them with their alphabet, to start them early. But certainly not everybody can do that, and I'd like to bring that back if I could. But then again, we don't have the dollars to do that. So, you know, it's going to take a full court press effort from the board to find monies and to tweak and squeeze and make this work.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we start going around? Anybody have any questions specifically for individuals here?
Yes, I know this proposal on the vote in May to go from a 5-year term to a 3-year term for board members, and I was wondering, being a board member in the past, I know there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of curriculum to go to, and it takes a couple of years just to get into the groove or get into the feel as a board member. And I'm just curious as to how you feel, or why did they even propose to go from 5 to 3? Because there is a learning process to become a board member.
Anybody want to take that first? Yeah.
I think the problem with any kind of term limitation, first off, I agree with you, it takes time to learn the job. If you start putting people in there for 3 years, it probably takes them a year and a half before they even learn how to function on that school board. And now he's only got a year and a half left before he's got to start campaigning for the re-election. We have a method in place in order for relieving people of their jobs. It's called a vote. If he serves in there for 5 years, he's not doing the job or she's not doing the job, vote him out. If he serves in there for 3 years, still have the same option to vote him out. But you can still vote him back in, so what was the difference if he served for 5 years? No difference at all, except that you finally learned the job. The person has learned the job, how to function as a board member. One thing about boards is not about an individual person, it's about 9 people. They've got to learn what's going on in the minds of these other 8 individuals who have input. By the time they learn how to compromise and negotiate and learn the process, you're on the way out. We can't do that. We have means of taking people out of office. Also people who seek these offices. If you can't do the job anymore, and if you've been selected for 5 years, and say 3 years down the road you can't do the job anymore, and this might not be a politically correct term, man up and get out. If you can't do the job, get out. Resign from the board and get out. Plain and simple. I don't need somebody to tell me I can't do a job. I can tell by my performance, I can tell by my attitude. If I learned in the military that every time I couldn't do a job, I could quit, they'd get me out. You know, if I couldn't make the standards, they got me out. When I worked in corrections, if I didn't know how to run my block, that sergeant would get me out of that block. If I don't know how to relate to my wife, she's going to kick me out of the corner. The whole So if you can't do the job, get out. I don't need a term limit to tell me to get out. People have
So I take it you're not in favor of term limits. I think 5 years. Anybody else have another opinion on that? Mr. Rothway?
Can I agree on most of them, but on this one I take a different viewpoint, because if you look past, in the past 4 or 5 years, we've had people that we couldn't vote out, and those are the people that have drawn down the fund balance and almost exhausted it to the point where there's going to be $981 at the end of the next school year. And you have people, the President of the United States serves 4 years, state senator and state assembly members serve 2 years. I do agree with Ken in the fact that if they can't do the job, then they should resign. But the people need that option. I mean, we've lost $12 million over the past 5 years, so I think the term limits, not term limits, just adjusting the term downward, not saying that you can't run in 3 years or 6 years or 9 years. But I do think it needs to be a little bit shorter because of the fact of what's gone on in the past 5 years. You need to give people an opportunity to correct, if they so choose, the choices that they made in the past, and be able to put new people in that will be able to do a better job in the voters' minds.
Anybody else?
Yeah, but you're ahead. Steve, would you be
Look, I'm on several boards. I'm a board of a company in North Carolina, one in Rochester, and helping 2 other companies elsewhere. If we had to wait 3 to 5 years for somebody to get their stuff together, we'd be in serious trouble as a business. I think that one of the reasons why it takes a while is because you're talking about an environment where anybody can be elected by popularity to a board, whether their qualifications are there or not. So that's one of the risks that you have, is that you have to have sometimes to allow people who may not have that kind of experience to come up to speed. Should we have that? I don't think so. I think 3 years, if they're not doing the job, then the community should be able to get rid of them. I think, I have no problem with the 3 year. I agree with Frank that it takes a while to get on there, but if you have the right people that you elected, it shouldn't take it that long. And if you have a good board with good leadership and good cohesiveness, you should be able to come right in. And if it's a good board that has a process to bring them into the system and say, okay, you can be a part of this, you're doing this, here's how we're doing this, it should be that time. So.
Well, when we first got here, I was asking Kevin if there was a seminar or some type of a program where the individuals, Board of Education members, and new candidates and old, can go through an educational process. And she's telling me that there's something, a primer of some sort, or finances, and some other things. So
it's actually mandated.
It's not.
It's mandated.
It's a state mandate.
Yeah,
so everybody gets a baseline education of some sort.
But let me qualify that, because up until this year, there was only one part that was mandated. There was a fiscal part. The board part just came out new. The new members had to take it. But I wish that everybody else had it, because it does help. I want to make sure you get a chance to answer this.
Okay, yeah.
On this particular issue, from his term of 3 to 5 years, I see pros and cons on both sides. I don't feel strongly, actually, to be honest, about either way. It's interesting hearing my colleagues debate that. I'd like, before I voted on it, I would like to hear more. I think if you had 5-year term limits, if you were burned out on it or weren't, Mr. Maurer said if you weren't doing your job, you can always step down. However, some people might be more stuck in their seat and might need, to be re-elected in. It might not be such a bad thing. So, to be honest, I would like to think about that more before I ever had to make a strong opinion about it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Yes, Holly.
Okay, being a board member requires tough decisions. Lots of you guys know that. Last night I was at a budget meeting, and they're very close to having a budget, just to let you know that. A couple things. Mr. Richard or Red Levine, who couldn't make it tonight, he's an incumbent who's running as well, indicated that he'd like to add another administrative position to the budget to help complete the new teacher evaluation. Mr. Marin, and you can correct me if I misrepresent this, indicated that he thought the pre-K program should be expanded to help kids be more successful in school. Afterwards, the business executive, who is Miss Mary Blaine, indicated that the sick leave reserve account was underfunded by nearly $2 million. She also indicated that the board had been using the excess fund balance, not sure, I think Andy had talked about that, had been using the excess fund balance to shore up their budget for the past 3 years. And next year there would be no excess fund balance left to pull from, $981, as Andy said. She indicated that our expenses would need to match our revenues next year, and so it's important to properly fund this reserve account. So she's saying, okay, this is the end of the excess reserve. Revenues need to match expenses next year, but at the same time, I've got a deficit in this account of nearly $2 million. So as most of you remember, 3 years ago, we were cited by the New York State Comptroller for having over $10 million too much in the fund balance. The Comptroller specifically recommended, I'm quoting now, district officials should develop a plan to use the excess fund balance in a manner that benefits district taxpayers. The following list was included: reducing property taxes, increasing necessary reserves like sick leave reserve account, paying off debt, and financing one-time expenditures. Okay, so those things didn't happen because we've still got this reserve account that's $2 million in the hole. Okay, so it's still underfunded. Now we have to make tough decisions. So this summer, if it works out that sequestration isn't adversely affecting us, or we come up with an extra $100,000 or $200,000, what do we do with it? Do we hire the extra administrator? Do we implement full pre-K? Do we pay down the underfunded balance? Or do we do something else with it? Andy?
I just think it's scary that we're operating without a fund balance, and I mean, the figures that Holly just quoted are eye-opening as well. I don't think we should be hiring new administrative positions. I mean, you had Dr. Rogers, Dr. Sposato, Dr. Urbach that didn't have the assistants, and they managed. I mean, I know people have different opinions on those individuals, but they didn't have that extra expense. And they also had the fund balance as well, too. I think that if we get an extra $100,000, $200,000, however much it ends up being, if we have extra funds left, it needs to go back in that balance in case something comes up. We have a bus that breaks down, we need to replace the bus, or we have a bunch of teachers take sick leave and we don't have that money there to cover that, then we're going to be in the hole. I think that the prudent thing fiscally to do would be to put it back in the fund balance in case something came up, that we don't have less than $1,000 to fund it. I mean, that's not going to, that's throwing dimes at something that costs $1 million or more. You need to have something there to cover a rainy day, and $981 is not being cut. So if we get extra money, it needs to go back into the fund balance, in my opinion.
And just to clarify, I'm not sure that just to make sure you all understand, we'll still have a little over $1 million in the fund balance, but we're talking about the excess, the $981, the amount that they've agreed to be able to touch. That was over, that's what we got cited for in that comptroller's report. So that's just to clarify that, sorry.
Next.
Gotta save for a rainy day, we gotta pay down that unfunded balance. We don't have the money, we know we're not gonna have the money. We really can't spend the taxpayers' funds. We have to make them aware of the fact that we're already underfunded. We have to take the resources that we have available at the end of the year and apply them to the unfunded balance.
Okay. You know, it's interesting because unless you have some sort of some fiscal experience, it's difficult to see the whole problem as a whole. It's kind of like somebody coming into your house, telling you how to run your own house, and you don't have to understand your personal responsibilities, whether in my case I'm paying my parents' Medigap insurance or I got to pay for my kids' medical stuff. So we have to be cautious that from the outside, we don't say, well, this is an easy thing to solve. Having said that, if we did a better job of exposing the reasons why and how we're spending the money, it would be easier for the community to understand why money is being spent and what it's being spent. To point this through, and yes, I think in previous years there wasn't as big of a need, but we had this EPPR thing that is significant, and the administrators are required to do a lot. Having said that, from last night, what I said was, you know, it's not in stone that this is going to be in place. So we have a few years for it to iron out some kinks, and frankly, for us to give the system some feedback that says, no, you can change some of these responsibility requirements because it doesn't work that way. So we do have a possibility, and that's why I held off on getting another admin, is because I think it's too soon to just jump in and hire somebody. We can just see how this works, and then we have a couple of years to say, okay, here's how we can change it and so forth. UPK, no matter how distressed we are for money, I'm looking at it as the big picture. Bang for the buck, value. Put the money in there, it's a ninefold. If someone were to come to you, an investment banker, and say, look, you're guaranteed that you're going to get 9 times the dollar on this, what would you do with it? You put your money in it. That's what it's for. Excess fund balance, yes. When I first got out, we got hammered by the audit and all that. It should have been there. I do have some mixed feelings on it because a later audit came back and said that it turned out that we needed that money there. So there's a middle ground. When you look at the taxpayer cost per what your house cost, when you look at the rate, it peaked for a while there about 5 years ago, and then it started coming back down. It's about managing the budget. So if you let it get crazy and go over the fund balance, that's not good either, right? So I agree with that. If it's managed a little bit better, then you won't have these aggressive peaks and valleys, but now you get stuck in a position where next year we don't have any money. So it's about managing, I think, that a little bit better. So I'm not necessarily sure that we have to plan for the catastrophe. I mean, I don't know that we're going to have every teacher call in sick. So I don't think you can plan for the dog walking the room strapped on with a bomb on its back. So you have to kind of manage that. You can't put all your money in there when you still have to pay for teachers. And especially, one thing that I want to point out is I'm very, very much for modifying and changing finances, but we have to be cognizant of how we impact the kids. That's really, really important because it's not just my kids. And my kids aren't going to be going to UPK. My kids are past that. But I still feel that as responsibility as a taxpayer, I think that's important. So I want to make sure that we don't get carried away where we just kill the budget and then you end up with 35 kids in a class, and now we suffer. Because when you look at the trend on education and communities as a whole, frankly, our biggest problem is that we don't have big business pockets to draw from. That's the fact, compared to the bigger districts that have a lot more money. So what do we have to do? We have to reduce our expenditures to the biggest parts, which are teacher things, but that is the biggest part of it. Benefits, and also increase the state aid, but that's not going to happen. So I think we have to manage the reserve account intelligently. I think we need to go out and take a look at what other districts are putting into those accounts and see what the norm should be. I don't want to necessarily go out there and say we're going to fill it up because then we can't pay the teachers either. So I just think we have to be smart about managing the entire budget.
face value, from as long as I've been involved, I appreciate that we're in quite tough financial times, and I would not be in favor of hiring an administrator at this time. But we also have to keep in consideration all the liabilities that we have, and not just with teacher sick call, but there's millions here, millions there. There's 93 million that we never talk about of retirement, healthcare liability that is hanging out there. What's going to happen to that? So I worry about these things. I would look at whatever money we got and treat it like we're not going to get it again. I'd be very careful with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a follow-up question. Talking about basically about carrying on what we're talking about. What about fiscal projections? What's your experience in 3- and 5-year plans, and how does that affect? How does that work in a school board situation? I've done plans, in other business, but I've never had to do it for a school board. And that's why I'd like you to start. You've been on the board for 3 years. What kind of projections can you do so that we know what it's going to cost 3 to 5 years out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like any organization, you should be able to have something there. There have been resistance in the past because, frankly, the volatility of what we know is going to happen with the state and so forth. That's been one issue. But up until really this year, with the new business manager, it's been a growing collective effort. I think Debbie will attest to this, is that we've been squeezing the dollars of the information. There used to be, well, we put this amount of money here because this is what we think we need, as opposed to, no, this is what we need. So we've been driving, at least in the audit committees I've been driving, for trying to have each building have a budget from the top down, so that we're not trying to guess, right? But I think we should have some projections. They don't have to be perfect, but we have to get into the habit of having some projections that we strive for, so that we know ahead of time. And it also helps us in communication, because a big part of making tough decisions, as you asked, is information. If you go to a negotiating table with the teachers union, and you sit there and you say, look, you're spending all the money, you're not going to get anywhere with that. So the approach to making tough decisions is communication, information. So by having projections over 5 years, we can at least say to all the parties, look, we're all in trouble. We all need to pull together on this. So the tough decisions and the projections have to be driven by leadership. The ability to be able to draw people together, have all the information put out there so everybody sees it, and say, how do we work on this together, and we're not going to get it. So I agree. Projections are
Somebody else on 9 minutes?
I think this would be one of the times that I would rely on other board members. I'm not a budget person. I'm not a bean counter. We have people on the board like April and Eric, who are in a number of countries. We have Mr. Amo, who's supposed to know how to do his job. He's going to have a lot of input into it. And I would take that information, research it as much as I could, and make sure that it's factual information. And I would probably base whatever votes I make based on whatever judgment was from the conclusion of that. I'm not being counted.
From my perspective, it is a very good question. It's been something that, I've attended a lot of board meetings in the last 2 years. I'm making when I can. And that's been brought up from the public, people in the audience. And I have never heard an answer, and I've heard excuses. It's hard to project what the state is going to give you, what the federal government's going to give you. Yeah, but you should also know what you need and what you're hoping to do. And yeah, looking forward is hard, but I think there should be a little extra special effort from the board to do that. And perhaps there is movement in the current board to do that. I'd be glad to assist in that as well. Some of the fiscal management of the school district has been a little upside down as well. They're always looking at what money they have, and then they decide where it's going to go, rather than asking administrators or working, superintendent working with his staff to find out what is needed and where it should go. So it's been a little upside down, and I'd like to see that corrected as well.
I think it's important to have a long-term sight on the financial picture of the school as well. I viewed reports where if we were to put aside 12 to, and Holly can correct me if I'm wrong, $12 to $15 million a year towards our long-term liabilities, we wouldn't have a huge $93 million liability. It's growing exponentially every year. And I'm going to be frank, I think that during the past 5 years, there's been an abject failure to deal with the finances of the school district. We've had a fund balance that could have been put aside for these purposes, and it wasn't, and now we're in a hole. So we're taking one-shot deals, spending down the fund balance, which isn't financially responsible, fiscally responsible, and now we're going to have to backpedal to try to build that back up and try to put money aside for these long-term liabilities, and we're starting off in a hole. So hopefully we can get people in the school board that are going to look at this, sit down, talk to Mrs. Blaine, she's a financial expert, talk to Eric, talk to April. I'm not strong in the financial background, I'm more in the legal background, but there needs to be something done. We can't just go from year to year to year. There are some constants that we are aware of, and we know how much it's gone up every year, so there needs to be really a 5-year, 10-year plan, because we can project those numbers out and we know what they're going to be. So the number keeps growing. I don't know if the state is going to come in and say that we have to pay for this one day. No one knows what the answer is going to be, but it's kind of scary that we have 40,000, 50,000 people in this area, $93 million, you do the math. It's got to come from somewhere, and it's probably not going to come from the state, so we have to tighten our belts and put money aside for those liabilities, or else our credit rating is going to take a hit.
I've got a question that I wanted to ask. One of the things that I really found a lack of in terms of the Thomas Plattsburgh and the board is that nobody ever talks about excellence and achieving excellence and setting your goals at a higher level and trying to attain those goals. I never heard it once actually in the discourse that we had with the Thomas Plattsburgh board in the past 12 months. Not even utterance. What I'm wondering is, what do you have in that school as a model of performance for excellence? Are there any models of performance? Do you have a program that would allow you to go to Vermont and look at that, not that that's the greatest or the best, but is there a program that would allow you to go maybe to another area, to look at that school, to look how it functions, to assess it, unravel it, peel the parts of the onion off and look at it and come back with something which is the kernel of
Best practices.
change?
Look at best practices.
Best practices,
Not New York State.
Not in New York State. How about another state?
There's some good schools in
You
New
have
York
a
State.
program like that, and people are hard. Is there a program like that? No. No, okay, thank you.
I guess that would be a good question for a board sitting around and kind of brainstorming. Could they get a couple teacher volunteers to do that? Maybe an administrator, a board member, make some contact, for example, with Vermont Place, and to make an effort. Just because it's not in place now doesn't mean it can't happen.
But it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
I mean, it really isn't rocket science.
I know rocket science.
But, except, well.
No, now, is there a concerted effort to follow excellence right now? I don't see aggressive exercise in that way. Do we have excellence in school? Yes, we do. We have the Bottle UN program, we have music programs that have been very good. Athletics have been very good. And just to point out, our budget on athletics is less than 0.5%, and it also draws kids. And for some reason, all the extracurricular activities that enlighten the kids more and gives them a better, well-rounded education seems to be the point of contention when it comes to budgeting, and don't like that because it's such a small part of the whole budget. But yes, I think there could be lessons learned, and I'll actually agree with the gentleman on the left here that New York may not be the place to wholly for superb excellence, but it's also not the worst. And we're not Kentucky or Mississippi, which really are doing poorly on a general scale. I will say though that when you have this panic of funds, people have a hard time looking at spending extra money on these things. Should we still look at them? I think it wouldn't be hard to have an exercise to look at what other places doing and how we try to do better. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. I agree.
Good.
Well, yeah, board member to board member, I'd like to ask you a question because, you and I think alike on several issues, and I know that you and I share a frustration with the amount or the degree of communication we're letting on and we're given, and it's very stifling. And then when you add to that this year we've gone to this one meeting a month format, we spend so much of that meeting, in my view, housekeeping, that we're not getting to any of these really meaty issues. So if we were to proceed together into this next year, how do you think you and I can help to reshape that a little bit so that we can get some better communication within the board and get better communication from within the school to give us the answers to these kind of questions?
Yeah,
because it's sorely lacking.
It is. And
we're stifled a lot.
Let me be, I guess, brutally honest here, is that you have to ask yourself, when you bring people into a group like the board, as you all know, before I got on it, there was a lot of discontent. That's been a problem. And a lot of people are actually well-intended, but that doesn't mean the community, like you say. So the thing that I focus on is effectiveness. Some people have asked me, well, why didn't you do more? Why didn't you do more? And in my businesses and the projects that I work on, whether it was military, the first thing I have to ask myself is, how effective am I going to be? Do I come in swinging the sword and try to, make it a point? Well, that's not going to garner any credibility with anybody. I have to sit, I have to listen, and I have to fight my battles onto what I can or cannot do. Because if I lose the credibility, then my voice doesn't count. And I think that for the most part, the feedback that I've gotten is that I've been pretty reasonable. I've listened to both new board members. I got enough respect from the old board members that I'm able to be more effective. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's about helping to change the culture, changing the culture internally so that everybody listens and everybody is able to feel respected, and try to do more of team building and bringing in, accepting new ideas. Because frankly, up until recently, new ideas weren't the thing that was followed. And new blood, I think everyone here is a good choice for board member. Outside of me as well. And it seems like everyone that I've heard so far has the right mindset. The question is, when you get on the board, are you able to listen to the other board members, even if you don't like what they say, try to agree to disagree, and move forward and try to develop. That's the goal.
I think one of the things that needs to be said is that the first thing the school board has to take is an approach that there's no us and them on the school board. The school board is a we. We are the representative of the people. It's not one group versus another group versus the people. We are there to represent what the public needs, what the school system needs, and we are to work as a group and to come together on a decision that's based on sound judgment. We have to forget old school versus new school, old concept versus new concept. It's a school board. It's 9 individuals, all equal. That's what this nation's about, all equal. That's what I was seeking for.
Okay. Anybody else? John, what was your question about the excellence study? What was your question again?
Yours.
My question about excellence?
Well, I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
No, you're addressing Holly's question.
No, Debbie had asked, board member.
So that, okay, well,
Together.
I'll answer them people. You did ask the excellence. You did ask the excellence question.
I did, yes. Do you have any models out there? Or what?
I don't have a model, but what I think that you need to have is a definition of excellence, first of all, and you need to go to every single interested group, be it the employees of the school, the parents, the kids. And that kind of goes into Debbie's question as well. We need to have these different groups represented equally, and I don't think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Ed or Debbie, is there a liaison for the parents and the community at large where they're offered input as well, or is it just the committee's structure as it exists now? Is it employees, kids? Is there a forum where taxpayers and parents can be heard at the board meeting other than going to the meetings and offering public opinion? Because I think that's important as well too. I think that there is transparency, but not as much as there should be, in that sometimes the taxpayers really, their only tool is to go to the voting booth and vote on the budget, and a lot of times they go in angry, and there's certain people that are going to fail a budget no matter what. So I think that if they're included more, there won't be that animosity, and everyone will foster an environment where they can all work together. So I don't know if that exists.
How long does a board meeting last?
No.
Yeah, we were there till 11, something very long. Yeah, it depends. It depends on what the issues are. It can be, are they efficient? That's a different question.
You only have one a month, so it's like.
I think that, I'm kind of jumping on the whole excellence thing. I don't want to get sure you get a chance to answer that. I think one thing that I did learn about the whole process is that in the budget session, by splitting it up to have one a month and having one specifically to budget, I think it's more efficient because we're focused on the budget. A good idea might be to have one a month during the regular course of the year, and then have the other one in the month to be specific to something.
A work
excellence, making the board better. Yeah, I think that. But I know that he didn't get a chance to answer the excellence. I remember sure.
Let me just ask a sub-question of that. There are committees that come out of the board, right? I mean, Eric Anderson, I was exposed to this operations committee. So you people are involved in more than just once a month, is my understanding.
Well, I'm on the audit committee. That's as well.
He's on a committee. And, okay.
I'm a cafeteria audit. I've been on 2 negotiating teams. So
you have.
Yeah.
You asked about a glimmer of hope for excellence. There must be a glimmer of hope of excellence at Beacon Town Central School System first. And I'm bragging here because I'm a dad. My daughter, Rachel, scored perfect on state exams for English. She also scored within 3 points of perfect in math. Now, there must be something going on in the school system that instilled that in her, along with her parents teaching her. So there's something there. We just can't seem to put it in words, we can't identify it. And that's where we need to work out. We need to look at what it is, where one student is in the same education system as everybody else, can do a higher standard than everybody else, or as everybody else. I think that's what it is. We can't put it into words, but it's there. It's there. The hope is there.
Is it the old-fashioned way from the old-fashioned days?
It's the old-fashioned ways from the old-fashioned days, along with introducing technology into the school system.
Our daughter worked for her father too. Dan Daniels, she was a runner and track runner for Beacon Town. We always noticed that the newspaper always had articles about kids throughout the cities and the counties who always did wrong. We never seen articles in the paper where kids did right. Now Jan, everybody knows Jan, she was wonderful. She went on to, what's the name of that college? Vermont and New Zealand, or Red Bull College and whatnot. She's now a teacher at Lacrosse College in Wisconsin. She got married 4 years ago, big wedding we had. Dr. still paying for it. And she had a little boy just about 9 months ago, 8 months ago. But the point is like you said, you see these things And you don't have to be a wizard, you don't have to be an accountant, you don't have to be a scientist. You just have to be somebody as plain and ordinary and normal in the system because you've worked with the system for all these years. You've seen it on both sides of the fence, up on a hill and whatnot. When the school system got rid of the PTA, back in the years gone by, where the parents had a word, got a word in edgewise, had a chance to say something, then the school system in the cities took over. So there was a lack of communication going on all the way around.
Okay.
I went to Beekman School about 12 weeks ago, I think it was, and it was in regards to Sandy, Newtown.
Sandy Hook, you made a presentation to us.
Showing all the kids. And I hold the New York State Fiscal Mission, 1975, here you can see it. The point I was trying to make to them is all schools are eventually going to have some kind of security system, one way or another. My idea is no guns whatsoever in the school, period. Now, if you want to have them outside for security, a gate system, a compound, just like this gentleman's worked all his life, so be it, but not in the school. My reasoning was you didn't have to hire anybody because there's so many of us old guys around that still have citizenship. We got a job to walk into, but you don't get paid. See, there's the beauty of it. You come in at 8 to 9 o'clock or 10 to 11 o'clock, and the next guy comes in, still talking.
Mr. Daniels, we need to jump.
The idea is, or
Excuse me, we need to get off the security issue and get back. I understand your point.
people don't come to these meetings because they don't get their 2 cents in.
Well, I'll give you all the time you want after 8:30 because we have a definite agenda here at 8:30. It shuts down. These gentlemen want to go home and spend time with their families. So I think that we want to move on. Gary Gus, you have a question, sir.
Yes, this is being discussed not only in the Beekman School District and every other school district in our county and Essex County. It's been in the paper almost every day to try to help the school districts with their budgets. The Plan A and the Plan B. I'd like your opinions, if you get on the board, what is your feeling as trying to get the employees, not your past employees, because they're under Plan A, and you're not going to take it away from retirees, but to have your existing and upcoming employees put on Plan B, which there isn't that much of a difference, but for the Beekman School District, it's projected that if we could get our employees to go to Plan B, the district would save between $800,000 and $900,000 a year. What is your feeling in that? Start anywhere you want.
He's been quiet. Of course, that is a really hot topic in the region. I have friends that are teachers. I have family members that are teachers. My dad is a retired teacher and administrator, and it's a difficult subject because is it something that needs to change dramatically? Like end of this year, we're all going to Plan B. I'm not sure. It would save the district a heck of a lot of money. There is a meeting April 23rd. I think I'm going to attend. I'd like to know more about it. Staff in middle school.
I've got to miss it. I'm having a heart cat that day.
Or excuse.
We'll videotape it.
But I know it would be a hardship for some, but it's something that definitely has to be looked at. The problem with our budget has to be looked at from top to bottom, from superintendent to, all the way down. I don't think in this financial situation, anything is untouchable, unfortunately. I think, it has to be evaluated. the consortium, I believe, is going to present a couple of different options, talking to other people, where new employees potentially will automatically, drop down to Plan B. And what do you do with these older employees, plus retired employees? There's some inefficiencies there. There's retired employees who are eligible for Medicare. Is it really necessary to have a full-blown Plan A when you're already using that as a secondary plan? The whole healthcare problem has to be looked at. So to answer your question, it's a possible solution.
Something that's phased in.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Marie?
Oh, next, okay. I have some insight on this. Worked with Mary Blaine quite a bit, and he's on the BOSI's board. I see some.
Sorry, what?
Mary Blaine.
I'm sorry, because I work with Mary Blaine on the audit committee and on the board. She's done a really good job presenting this. The bottom line is that it's really no brainer. Plan B is as effective, costs less, because even though the Plan B doesn't cover as much entirely, we have a separate gap insurance, if you will, that whatever doesn't get covered by Plan B, well, they get covered by that. So it's more about educating the community and the teachers and everybody else that there is no risk really to going to the Plan B. So there have been some districts that have been in Plan B for 5 years already in this area.
And the gap insurance is paid out of the employee's pocket or out of the district?
It's all the same. It's all paid by the district. The whole package costs less.
It's a
and covers
taxpayer.
everything.
So I'm just trying to understand. So that's an account, a make-whole account?
Yes.
Versus just say Plan B?
Right. No. So the offer is Plan B and this other piece, so that whatever Plan B doesn't cover, this other piece covers it. And what it is it allows you, if you look at the statistics, the numbers, your Plan A covers you as if you're going to get, everyone's going to get really sick. So there's a middle ground that they found that Plan B allows you to cover almost everything, and there's this other piece that covers all those who actually go over Plan B a little bit more. You see what I'm getting at?
No.
Is there really savings in that way?
Oh, tremendous. But I can't go into a lot of it because of negotiations, but it has been. It was presented very well to the administration, all the teachers. It was very well received, and I think that going forward with the other presentations, we'll see that it's very fair.
Monroe had a model of that.
And what's the cost savings on that?
Not as much as they had anticipated.
Duh.
Okay.
I have a question on that too. I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot here, but the make-whole provision, is the money set aside for that? Does that make the whole thing as expensive as Plan A?
No.
Okay.
No. That's exactly it. So,
What's the cost savings?
So what you're saying is that if you go to Plan B, you're actually saving money even with the gap insurance that the school would pay.
But how much?
Well,
It's a forecast.
it's quite a bit.
Well, quite a bit, because some people could be $5 million and others could be $200. I mean,
Right. I'm going to say that last year we saw an estimate out there about 300,000 total for the district, which is significant, but there's also the compound impact for the.
So that's a far cry from 900.
Yeah, the number Gary threw out was actually almost $1 million. That was if everyone was switched unilaterally to Plan B.
That's
actually including retirees. So that includes retirees.
yes.
That's
right,
huge.
That's including.
That is
retirees.
huge. But the theory behind what Ed is talking about is Plan A is overkill, but people like, I need Plan A, but they don't really need Plan A. But you get this Medigap insurance or this gap insurance that reimburses them for anything that would cost them if they were to switch to Plan B. So they save, but not as much as a unilateral switch to Plan B.
I think, John, well, the other thing, I agree with you, but I also think that giving up the if it is a $300,000 savings at the start, you can't have a demand that is going to say, well, you have to come up with $900,000. But if it's a $300,000 at the start, as long as they're willing to negotiate, then I'm more than willing to negotiate. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the board too, if the teachers and the employees come back and they say, well, this is gonna save $300,000, it's a start, and then we can negotiate on something that they want as well too, so it's gotta be a negotiation where if they're giving something up, how are they gonna be, what needs do they have too? So I think that 300,000, if that's the number, that's a good start.
And when does Plan B plus the gap insurance become a Cadillac plan?
When it's over 20, what is Obama?
And when is that?
20,000?
Because as soon as that combination becomes a Cadillac plan, then you're looking at a 40% excise tax on that paid by the taxpayers.
Well, I think
40% of
I read a story today, Max Baucus, he's a senator from out west. They're still not certain on that either, whether or not that Cadillac tax is going to go into effect, because basically in his own words, he says it's going to be a nightmare to implement Obamacare. I'm not saying I support it or don't, that's not my project for running for the school board, but we don't even know what the reality is. It's scary to think about, but there's no answer, and it's kind of another unfunded mandate. We don't know if that's going to be taxed or not.
We'll assume it is.
Let's give Mr. Bauer a chance.
we're missing one important factor here, and that's sustainability.
Amen.
We can't sustain these costs. When you're talking already about $93 million in liabilities between employees, pensions, and health care, now we're going to add a possible Obamacare addition to this, maintaining a Cadillac plan type insurance policy. We need to tell these people the truth. It may be 15 years down the road, but we can't afford this $93 million that's going to come due because of the amount of employee retirees and the amount of health care that we have, that they're going to end up with nothing. Now, if we don't tell them that and make it perfectly clear that this is the truth, and there's nothing wrong with telling the truth, even if they get mad at you, tell them the truth. 15 to 20 years down the road, we are broke. When we are broke, there is no health care, there is no retirement pension, there is nothing. There is no Town Central School System. We are nothing. So let's stop playing games with people. Get up, stand up, and tell them the truth. We can't afford this. That's the bottom line.
Any other questions? We'd like to thank the speakers for being here, the candidates, and something burning
It's actually been, that is the big pink elephant in the room, I think, in health insurance, and it's a legacy system, but those are good comments.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't exactly, but I know that
this has actually been, I just would like to get this out, and unfortunately Ed's going to be the only one to be able to answer because he was the only one on the board at the time, but last May 22nd, it was April Bingle, and I agree with all the comments about cohesiveness and anything to facilitate bringing new board members on, totally on board with that. But it was April Bingle's first meeting on May 22nd of last year. It was over 1 year, 5 weeks out from Scott Amo's contract extension, and April moved to table the discussion about Amo's extension so she could assess the performance review so she could intelligently vote on it. And the board unanimously voted against her. They did not, including you. You did not, so that kind of contradicts this whole cohesiveness and bringing someone in and helping them be part of the board because no one accommodated April. She just wanted to get, and she abstained, correct?
Yeah, I actually, when I first came out, I abstained from that exercise personally. I did. I think that go either way. You know, if you don't know what's happened, if you haven't been involved in it, it's difficult for you to measure somebody. I think had we gone through a process where we informed the entire board of what we thought the measure was there, and maybe frankly, if we had a better system to do better evaluations of people, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, I was on the fence on that. Again, it comes down to effectiveness and hopefully being able to change the entire system.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right, I'd like to thank all the people that are here, Mr. Brockway, Mr. Mauer, Mr. Maureen and Mr. Hackett.